price is on the defensive. This year, play offense and get back to the fundamentals. For over 40 years, Advanced Trading's non-predictive approach has helped farmers secure and extend profits, regardless of market trends. Let Advanced Trading help you take control of your balance sheet by creating a marketing strategy to protect your operation and reduce market risk. Our team is positioned to help you make the most of 2024. You never stop working, and neither do we.
Good afternoon. My name is Drew Moore. I've got Brian Basting and Nathan Mangold in the studio today to talk about the June USDA report. Before we get into our questions, just a quick recap at the end of the day. July corn closing up 4, Dees corn up 2.5, a little bit negative on the soybean and wheat side, with July beans down 0.75 cents, November beans down 4, and then July Chicago wheat down 12 cents. So speaking of wheat, we'll get into that question with you first, Brian. Russia, certainly kind of the focus right now with some of the weather concerns that they've had. USDA also obviously taking note of that, lowering production in Russia by 5 million metric tons to 83 million metric tons, but also, more importantly, lowering that export forecast down 4 million metric tons to 48 million metric tons. As most know, last year was a record wheat export number out of Russia at 54 million metric tons. What does the future hold if these declines in production in Russia, the Black Sea, continue to persist?
It's really a critical question now, Drew, because as we approach harvest, the market is looking for some type of factor to offset harvest activity.
Sure.
Because we're just starting to harvest here in the U.S. And of course, the Northern Hemisphere harvest will increase the next 45, 60 days. Mm-hmm. There is a correlation, Drew, between the change in the Russian production estimate from the previous year and their their corresponding, I should say, change in exports for that year. Pretty strong correlation. So, short answer to your question is, the smaller the Russian crop goes, if it does decline, underline if it does decline, their exports are going to decline further, projected for this year. So, I think that the key thing there is, how much further will the crop decline? There are some estimates out there, Drew, below 80 million tons. This is a story that's being written each day, though, because there are some people saying that the near-term forecast is normal precip now for some of the driest areas. So we all know wheat can surprise us, how well it can withstand. But there does appear to be some irreversible freeze damage from that cold weather that we saw the first 10 days of May. Having said that, again, the market's known that now for basically over a month, what the impact of that is. So, but short answer is, the smaller the Russian crop goes, the smaller their exports go, and opens up more opportunities potentially here for the U.S. So it's something we want to keep a close eye on as this harvest gets underway in the U.S.
Sure. Thank you, Brian. That's helpful. Nathan, over to you on the corn side of the ledger. Not a lot of changes to the U.S. or world S&Ds for this or next year. From a cash standpoint, we've got a lot of producers still holding, 2023 old crop corn. Not a lot of material sales for next fall corn as well. So what type of cash implications does that have? And what are some potential strategies as well to kind of focus on, or any other comments you have?
Good to start with the wheat question, because wheat and corn are definitely tied to the hip, to a degree, and the wheat corn spread has done a lot of work to take wheat out of the feed rations. That's maybe reversed here a little of, maybe call it a buy the rumor, sell the fact over the last week to 10 days as the markets kind of come down and agreed with the 80 or low 80 million ton type of a Russia crop. And like Brian said, we'll see what happens. Can that go lower? But I also want to give Brian just some kudos. His HRW model for Kansas was within 7 million bushel of the USDA today.
Pretty good.
So good job, Brian.
Well, we get great input, Nathan, from your customers and all the ATI folks, our branch offices. We really take that information that they're giving us to heart from the country. So
Good job. Yeah, so on the cash side for the farmer, the message has been pretty clear most of the year, particularly now. There's multiple factors. One, what we call the basis. The cash market is very firm. this has impacted the July SEP corn spread. So the difference between the July and SEP corn futures, we normally have what we call a carry in between those spreads, and that is close to even money now between those two spreads.
Sure.
And so the basis is really high. There's no futures carry. So the signal's pretty clear to both the grain elevator and the farmer: sell the cash. Cash in on the old crop, do what the market is telling us, and we have a lot of weather in front of us. The 6 to 10, 8 to 14s above normal temps. Short term, that feels pretty good. Get the roots down and let's get in some of that fertilizer. But long term, obviously, we still have pollination, the critical July weather month in front of us. So sell the cash and turn around and buy calls. July calls expire June 21st.
Mm-hmm.
So probably not enough time on those, and they're going to expire before pollination. And with the crop in some areas being planted a little later, you definitely probably want a little extra time on your side. So I'd probably push out to something out forward, August or Sep calls.
Mm-hmm.
And volatility after today's report, the nearby July at the money calls or options were near 21%. So options overall are a good buy historically.
Very cheap.
And you're in front of a lot of weather and in front of one of the major wheat exporters of the world that is got a major crop issue happening. How bad, we don't know for sure. If for some reason wheat's got to go to $10 or something, corn's not going to ignore it. And we've got to go into that pollination time frame. So it's real simple to me. Sell the cash, go buy one of those calls, and your old crop's put to bed. You don't have to worry about it. Now you can focus on new crop.
Mm-hmm.
I think in general, most commercial customers I talk to, the farmer has sold less than 10% of his new crop corn. So, and beans are the same. So we're very undersold. The crop is in the ground in almost most everywhere. So you just got to look at opportunities to start to protect that. And so, but the first thing to do, sell the old crop cash and buy some calls.
Yeah, seasonality this time of year doesn't suggest prices, outside of the next week, really should warrant much higher from here as well. So just from a seasonality standpoint.
That's
correct?
right. So yeah, from a seasonality standpoint, but we do have some major weather and world. There's a lot of embers glowing out there that could turn into a fire here around the world.
Yep, absolutely.
I just add to Drew, to Nathan's comments by saying that he did a terrific job by saying get control of this old crop, because it's very difficult to address new crop sales when you're still holding a fair amount of your old crop. So
Yep.
as Nathan said, get control of your old crop, then you can turn your focus entirely to new crop.
Absolutely, absolutely. Nathan, let's touch base on soybeans. The USDA's got record exports to China at 109 million metric tons in the 2024-2025 growing season. We've got some additional purchases from China here in the old crop. What does that, if any, have any impact on the market, or is that more of a spread statement? What are your thoughts there?
Good question. Good follow-up question there. We can't out-predict markets, and we can't definitely out-predict politics. And just like we're going through an election year, so is Brazil.
Right.
And so whoever's in office wants to stay in office, and they're playing politics. And so this last week there was a tax implemented in South America, in Brazil, and essentially what it did is it had the major ABCD commercials pull offers from the marketplace as they tried to understand what this new tax was going to do. And as they did that, China came in and they've bought a handful of cargoes of beans, we believe mostly from the U.S. Gulf. And so to your point, Drew, it's the beans in Brazil didn't go anywhere. It's just a matter of figuring out what's the new tax scheme, and then how does that impact both the commercial seller and or the farmer. And a tax ultimately, usually the farmer has to eat that when it's all said and done. And just yesterday they started to rescind that tax. So it had to be approved by Congress. They are not going to approve approved this tax. So it's either going to go away or have a lower version of the current tax. But China did come in, bought a handful of cargoes in a time frame we didn't necessarily expect them to. So it did have some impact, to your point, more of a commercial impact on basis and spreads.
Sure, sure. There's a little bit of a currency move in the Brazilian real as well.
Yeah, since January 1st, the real's up 10%. So,
Right.
yeah, the Brazilian farmer is currently harvesting the safrinha corn crop. So reports are in the last week or so has seen more corn movement than soybeans,
Sure.
particularly because of the tax.
Right. No change in South American corn production, though, or what did the USDA have to say?
No. So I think, for me personally, that's what I was most excited about today, just to kind of get my arms wrapped around it. What is the Argentina and Brazilian corn production number? And they punted on both of those. History would say it's more of a July, August timeframe that they tend to make those changes.
Sure.
So it's not uncommon for them to skip making alter a change in June. I think the Brazilian farmer, I think the safrinha crop, give or take, close to 10% harvested. Argentina, we'll get some harvest progress out this afternoon. There may be close to 40% harvested. So
Sure.
part of the Brazil thing is it's early, but you sure would have thought we would have heard enough about the Argentine crop and the expectations of some of the disease they had,
Right. Right.
to maybe lower that production. I just look at Dr. Cordner, a very followed consultant for South America that a lot of people hear of. The difference between Dr. Cordner and the current USDA corn production numbers out of Brazil and Argentina, out of South America altogether, it's a 550 million bushel difference, 14 million metric ton. Now, I believe maybe he's too far on the low end, but still, you know, a 500 million bushels is significant, and that has, depending on which country, we potentially lower production. It has impacts on U.S. exports out of the U.S., whether it's old crop or new crop. So that story is yet to be told. So we could still have some fireworks back to farmer, go buy those call options.
Sure.
Don't think
Sure.
this thing is topped out because the crop
Right.
looks good in your backyard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good. Good. That's really helpful. Thanks for that, Nathan. Brian, you know, maybe last, you know, question here before we wrap up is what's the weather forecast? We've touched base a little bit, but I mean we are in the, you know, near peak of the growing season right now, and you know, over the next, you know, month. So what is, you know, from what you read, what you see, you know, in the day to day, what do you see, and what, you know, maybe reiterate some of the strategies we've talked about as well.
Yeah, it certainly is that time of year, Drew, for lack of a better phrase, when you start talking about pollination, pod set, pod fill for beans. Excuse me, you can stretch that all the way into first half of August. I think last year, if we learned anything, Drew, is that the weather is critical, but we also have to respect what the genetics have done the last few years. So
Absolutely.
it really is a double-edged sword, and goes back to what a point that Nathan made earlier, which is spot on. Price is simply unpredictable. If you'd have told us at this time last year that we were looking at a bone-dry period here, particularly in the heart of the Corn Belt, Illinois, for example, we end up nationwide with a record yield. You'd have shook your head and said that's not possible. Every year is going to have those embers that Nathan highlighted a moment ago out there, and this is one year I think that they could surprise us either way.
Sure.
Now, we did see a very tremendous response yield last year. Surprisingly, a positive response. Certainly hope that happens this year. There's some folks out there saying that August could be warm this year.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's not an ideal finish for the growing season, but take that with a grain of salt. Putting all that aside for a moment, Drew, I want to come back to a couple points that Nathan made. Getting control of your old crop now as we approach this last critical stage of the growing season coming up, and the end of the crop year is only a couple months away now too. Get control of any remaining old crop. Put that to bed, as Nathan said. Put a call on it. Zero in on 24. Potentially even, I'd stretch that out to 25, Drew.
Absolutely.
It's not too early, depending on some factors, but definitely get your ducks in a row with 23, then move to 24. Flexibility is always a key.
Absolutely.
Providing the downside protection. Put option is definitely something that provides that downside protection. As Nathan said, volatility isn't sky high at the moment. It is an investment, but it's a good investment in terms of volatility. It also leaves that upside open, Drew. If we do get a good weather rally at some point, or hopefully only a weather rally rather than a weather problem. But also, as Nathan said, a 500 million bushel change or variation between high and low in South America. Wow, that's really a recipe for volatility there too as we get into this harvest in Argentina. The latter half of the harvest is going to be more of that diseased crop, corn stunt disease, and we'll see what the Brazilian crop. It's been such a dry finish of the growing season in Brazil. Mm-hmm. Point being, though, again, put all that in a hopper. Flexibility, leave the upside open, get a flow underneath yourself, get control, and feel good about your marketing rather than waking up one day and the market's up 20 cents in the morning and by the end of the close it's down 15 cents.
Yeah.
And we can all shake our heads knowing we've seen those kind of days. So
absolutely.
If that does happen with a strategy you laid out ahead of time, Drew, you have control of that. You know exactly what you're going to do in that environment. But every year is different. This one will throw us some curves, I'm sure, along the way too.
Absolutely. A lot to digest over the coming month for sure. But yeah, we've got another report on June 28th. That's end of the month, end of the quarter, the mid-year point of the year. So that should certainly add some volatility with that planning intentions update and then an update on stocks as well. So we'll be back in here to digest those numbers at the end of the month. But also be sure to like and subscribe to our ATI YouTube channel. You can watch the ATI Pro Media team every weekday morning at 9 a.m. for breaking news and market activity. And certainly want to give a shout out to all the fathers out there. Happy Father's Day here this upcoming Sunday. So with that, we'll call it a day. And thank you both for your time today. Have a good day.
Welcome to Advanced Trading. Join the community of thousands of subscribers for access to industry-leading risk advisors, insightful research, and engaging live streams. We are your go-to channel for the latest grain market and livestock analysis. Subscribe now.